Hello and welcome to WELSTech, the place where we explore the intersections of technology and ministry. Today on the show, we explore personal knowledge management systems, or PKM, a new way to think about note-taking and what to do with those notes. We're so happy you decided to join us. Enjoy the show. WELSTech is a bi-weekly podcast exploring the intersections of technology and ministry. It is part of the podcast network sponsored by WELS, the Wisconsin Evangelical Lutheran Synod. Our show today is hosted by Martin Spriggs and Sally Draper. Welcome back to WELSTech, everybody. This is Martin Spriggs, and you've joined a show about technology and ministry. We're on episode 664, and we're recording on October 12th, 2021. And my podcasting partner right alongside, as usual, and some new digs over there, Sally. Hey, how about that?
Hi, Martin. Yeah, I decided to remodel my bedroom with the WELSTech logo emblazoned on the wall, just to keep it near and dear to my heart.
That is dedication. Yes.
Definitely.
The wonders of Zoom backgrounds. Yes. Since we are doing both audio and video, we decided to do a little work on the video side. We realize most of our audience is audio listeners, which is great. We continue to encourage people to do that. But those of you that are inclined to view the video, you got something pretty to look at. So that's the ticket. How's your week been, Sally?
It's been good. Fall has arrived officially in Minnesota, and we got some cooler temperatures. The leaves are turning. It's a pretty time of year. Unfortunately, it is foreshadowing of what is right around the corner behind it, and not quite ready for that yet. Don't say the S word. No.
Yeah. Fall is my favorite, actually one of my favorite times of year, at least early fall. It gets a little bit more dicey, the further you get in October and then early November, of course. But Debbie and I are doing a hiking trail challenge. We did this last year. There's an Ice Age trail that runs throughout Wisconsin. You Wisconsinites probably know what I'm talking about. It's about 1,000-mile trail. And they celebrated their 40th anniversary. It's all mostly volunteer maintained, but it goes starts up in Door County and then it wiggles down to past our house really, and then into Waukesha, and then curves all the way back up to the cities someplace and ends up there. We were up at the terminus of one end last weekend. And they did a 40-mile challenge, which we did last year. And it's not yet, you don't have to walk 40 straight miles. You do it over the course of October. It's 41 miles. They're doing it again this year. So we're going to try and do that again on this Ice Age trail. But it's really cool because, the trees are turning, the bugs are no longer there. And it's a usually good afternoon or weekend walks are kind of nice in those beautiful surroundings. So we're enjoying that. So that, again, leaves turning and no bugs. That's a good combination for me.
Definitely. Hopefully you have your camera along and capturing some of that beauty, because it's really stunning this time of year. That's for sure.
Exactly. Our topic of the day. This is I really enjoyed last time with our education-focused podcast with Rachel and Jason. Always enjoy time with them. But it's just the two of us, and we kind of brainstorm and pick topics that we think might be of interest. Sometimes it's something that's on our brains and something that is dominating our time, which is the case, at least for me, for this particular topic. Sometimes it's more just things that have come in from our listeners saying, hey, why don't you talk about this? But the topic that we wanted to talk about today is called personal knowledge management. I think I teased it a couple of weeks ago. And personal knowledge management, or PKM as it's called, is something that kind of grabbed my attention because I was really looking for an organization productivity slash thinking. I'll call it a thinking tool. Sally and I have both been reading a book for an offsite we're having coming up later this week. Actually, Sally's going to be in beautiful Wisconsin. A book called Deep Work. And part of that is trying to set aside time on a regular basis to not just kind of think or work in the shallows, so to speak, the work that doesn't take a lot of brain power, but spending as much time as you can in deeper work, where you're spending some of that God-given brain power that he's given you. And I was kind of struggling for, how do I capture that? How do I both document what I'm reading, take notes, but then also do something with that knowledge that I'm gaining? And that's kind of the theory behind personal knowledge management, or PKM. It's a fairly new concept. And I'll just read the 2 or 3 sentence description in Wikipedia just to get us started here. Personal knowledge management is a process of collecting information that a person uses to gather, classify, store, search, retrieve, and share knowledge in their daily activities, and the way in which these processes support work activities. It is a response to the idea that knowledge workers need to be responsible for their own growth and learning. It is a bottom-up approach to knowledge management. And that definition, Sally, reminds me of our discussion from the book we were reading over the summer about email. And it was talking about this new age of knowledge workers. And one of the reasons that we wanted to, one of the reasons that maybe we're challenged to get as much out of ourselves as we can, is because we haven't kind of grasped or made the transition from the industrial age to the knowledge worker age.
Yeah, I have read these books along with you, Martin. They all both are written by Cal Newport, A World Without Email that we read this summer, and this new Deep Work book that we're reading currently.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to be honest, if I were to take a step back and just kind of summarize my reading experience, I struggle with comprehension.
Mm-hmm.
And I do a lot better if I write things down.
Right.
As a matter of fact, I'm the person in church on Sunday that always has a notepad with them, because I take notes during the sermon. And if I didn't, I wouldn't be nearly as focused. But there's something, I'm that kind of person. I need that tactile action of writing things down to lock in some of the concepts that I'm studying or hearing presented or whatever it may be. So this really trips the trigger with me, because oftentimes those notes end up in the margins of the books or on this little sheet of notepad, and they don't all come together. And I really like the concept of having things in one place where even the tool itself can begin to help you make connections.
Right.
Between the things. And I think that's a powerful concept that I see represented here in the little bit of exposure I've had to personal knowledge management.
Mm-hmm. And they make a big point of it. And there's lots of stuff written, and there's many tools which we're going to talk about. And this is more just an introductory conversation. We're not going to attempt to teach everything that there is to know about a PKM or personal knowledge management. But one thing that they make a big deal of is that just writing stuff down isn't enough. The ability to obviously capture that reference material is good, but it's not just the storage of that reference material or traditional notes. It goes beyond that. It's what you do with it after. So they give an example in a lot of these readings where you take notes on let's say a meeting. So you and I are in a meeting, and I'm taking notes, you're taking notes. And the way I do that is I have a digital page for every day. I do all kinds of things on that page. I write down the verse of the day. I do some other planning, goal setting, that kind of stuff. But on that day, I take notes on every meeting or phone call or anything that is noteworthy, so to speak. But the real key according to personal PKM, is that those notes just can't sit there. You have to revisit them. So there has to be some kind of routine, and this gets back into some of the reading we've been doing too, where you go back and you revisit and you ask kind of some deeper questions. What do these notes mean? What am I going to do with these? And you have to make these temporary, fleeting notes, they call them, into something more permanent or useful. And that's kind of the first step to needing a system. Because if you were just kind of taking notes and just to be able to refer back to them a year later, chances are they're not going to be very useful. But if you revisit them and you took those notes for a reason, and then you did something with them, then you need something to capture what comes next. And that's the point of some of these systems. And there's all kinds of tools and techniques. One of the methods that they talk about is something called Zettelkasten. So for you German Lutherans, those of you that know German probably could be able to translate that. Zettel and Kasten, two different words put together. Zettel is a word for slip of paper, or a note or a reference or an index card. And Kasten is a box. And it comes from, I think I have the reference here. What was his name? His name is Nicholas
Luhmann, right?
Luhmann, yeah. Yep. He was a German sociologist and kind of the founder of this, what's called smart note-taking and knowledge management system. He wrote 70 books, 400 scholarly articles, was very, very prolific, and he needed a system. And this was back in the pre-computer days where he got this, these note cards. He wrote over 90,000 notes and put them in basically a box. It was a compartmentalized box. We'll put a link to this in the show notes, but the box kind of looks like an index card holder that you used to find probably in libraries, where he would put the cards in the appropriate boxes, code them appropriately, and link them to each other, so that if he wanted to explore a topic, he would really have a number of ways to get at that information and do some more sophisticated or deeper thinking on topics that he wanted to write about or debate about, those kinds of things. So very interesting backstory to this whole PKM thing.
Yeah, I think of it in today's terms. Maybe we do something similar, quasi, with like hashtags that we add to social media posts or whatever. So on Twitter, you could search for a particular hashtag and see this compilation of tweets around that topic. And his paper-based card system was his approach to being able to hashtag his data and pull it together around different topics. And I can see that being super valuable. I know, everybody's world is a little bit different. In my world, just keeping up with data definitions and things that I work with on a daily basis, it'd be really great to have that kind of a knowledge base to draw from. Yep.
The way, if we're putting this into maybe the 2020s, so to speak, maybe a good paradigm is a wiki, personal wiki. Most people are familiar with the ability to kind of write a page and then easily create a link to a new page, and then that links to a new page, and kind of what the web was built on. But wikis are a little bit different in that perspective. So kind of these systems are all about links and tags and knowledge graphs and heat maps, and being able to view your information in different ways. And then the systems that you put these in are kind of a single source of truth, where you store, you create, you think, you organize. And I think there's the end goal, obviously, is to kind of climb the pyramid, so to speak. They talk about the DIKW pyramid: data, information, knowledge, wisdom. So obviously, when you're just collecting information, that's the data part. Data put together in a logical format makes obviously something more valuable. That's information. And then that goes up the tree, up the pyramid to knowledge, and then finally to wisdom. And there's, I think, a lot of different applications for this kind of system for call workers as I was thinking through this. And I think from a pastor's perspective, this kind of tool is essentially what they do when they're building or crafting Bible studies and Bible classes. You're taking information that God has provided in his word. You're making one link to another. You're putting it together. And ultimately, you want to provide an experience that produces a disciple who is wiser. And same with the sermon writing process or a sermon study, where you're collecting all kinds of pieces of information. You have different thoughts, illustrations, different outlines, different approaches. Same thing. Blog posts, I'm using these for at this point. You could use these for event planning or project planning or just general note taking. Just a place where all your stuff goes is kind of the concept here. I'll also put a link in the show notes to an English, I think he's English, certainly sounds English. I don't know if he's Scottish or Irish or, he's somewhere over there. He uses a tool called Obsidian, which is what I use too, the software that I use to take digital Bible notes. He calls it Biblecasting, kind of a neat takeoff of Zettelkasten. But he has a whole series of videos on how he uses this to take or do Bible study. So I thought that was pretty cool. So I think there's lots of applications for pastors. I think there's applications for teachers as well. I can think of things like curriculum development. I'm going to be writing a master's course for MLC in the next year. And I definitely will be using a tool like Obsidian for information gathering, curriculum development, lesson planning, those kinds of things, just collecting all that information, thinking about it, organizing it, and making something useful out of that information, hopefully dispensing wisdom, to the people that I'll be teaching. But I can think of, again, blog posts for teachers, flipped classroom preparation, again, event planning, project planning, research paper writing, prepping. I know a lot of our teachers taking master's level courses. That's really kind of what a lot of these tools are aimed at, is kind of academic writing and academic research, kind of making sense of all this stuff and going a little bit deeper rather than just collecting reference material. You have to do something with that, come up with some original thinking. And I think that's one of the powers of this kind of tool too.
Yeah, I'm thinking back to the pastor examples. I remember talking with a pastor once, and he proudly showed me his wall of 3-inch binders, and each binder was a book of the Bible. And he had, put together all his sermons and Bible studies and things and organized them in paper format in binders to capture all that kind of information. So this would be the next level to go digital with all of that and be able to have that kind of collective resource at your disposal. What kind of tools are you using? You mentioned one, I think.
Yeah, that's what I was going to go to next. Obsidian, Obsidian, is one of the first kids on the block. And I really like it because of its simplicity. The kind of the appeal of a tool like Obsidian is it's all based on Markdown, which is interesting. Markdown language is a kind of a simplified formatting. I don't know I should probably bring up Wikipedia for Markdown too. It's probably about 20 years old at this point, but it's something you and I, Sally, use all the time when we use Trello. So that's how they want you to format your stuff. But you basically can use headers of different weights by putting hashtags in front of text, or an asterisk that would denote an italic reference, or a dash for a bulleted list, those kinds of things that kind of keep your fingers on the keyboard. You're not clicking around all kinds of buttons like you do in Microsoft Word. It's basically a text-based way to format or organize text. But Obsidian basically is just the front end for that. So the nice thing is it kind of it gives you a nice user interface for it, but it's at the end of the day just a front end for all these markdown files, and you put them in folders. And if you ever wanted to move to a different system or cut and paste them into something else, you have these markdown files. You're not kind of stuck or trapped with a Word formatted document or something that's in PowerPoint or Excel or whatever. It can house different kinds of documents. Those of you that are watching, I'm showing you my Obsidian and a Bible study that we're going to be doing in a couple of days in our offsite. And you can throw PDFs in there or Word docs, those kinds of things, and it will display those and you can organize them that way. But really its power is in its simple note-taking capabilities. And you have the markdown version, and then you click a button or a key combination, you can kind of see it's in its formatted version. You can print these to PDF, save them out in all kinds of different formats, those kinds of things. As I said, I'm using this for blog post writing, all my note-taking, those kinds of things. That's even our picks of the week. I've got a list of future picks of the week that is housed in this kind of tool. So that's one tool. There are other competing products to that. One of them is called Rome Research. Another that's really popular right now is called Craft. Another one that is kind of a PKM tool that I think some of our listeners use is Notion. That's been around for a while. That's a little bit different flavor, not firmly in that PKM framework area. So those are the three big ones, but there's more coming on the scene all the time. I mentioned a tool that I use with my knowledge management approach a couple of weeks ago, and that's Raindrop.io. That's a way to kind of bookmark the web and collect that information and tag it and those kinds of things. And one that I've really been liking lately, one tool that's baked into Microsoft Edge, is their collections tool. We'll put a link to an article in the show notes about how to use collections. I think we've talked about that in the past, Sally, but just a way, if you're doing research, if you're collecting information, how do you get that all together without kind of keeping all these tabs open? This kind of makes sense of it and puts it into what they call a collection. You can even highlight content and it'll put that in the collection as well. So those are some of the tools that are out there. And again, we've got other things like OneNote or Apple Notes, even with a Kindle book. If you're taking notes on a book you're reading, you can do highlighting and put notes in there and ultimately get that out with the Kindle app on the web as a way to export all that stuff. So those are some of the ones that I came across.
So all of those, I would assume, are cross-platform, so you could get to your notes on a mobile device or whatever, or add to your Obsidian files from
Obsidian
your phone.
is a Mac and PC as well as tablet and phone. All those are available, which is kind of key, right? Because you always want to be able to get at your stuff. Like you probably take notes on your iPad for sermon notes. But then what do you do if you're on your computer and you want to get access to those or use those notes in some other context? So
exactly. So yeah,
so
and then there's the whole handwriting recognition, getting it into there. So maybe you have some OCR involved in that process too. I don't know.
Yeah. Apple does, I think, a much better job than they used to with recognition. If you're taking Apple Notes or something like that, or using the Apple Pencil, it even has a scribble function that is really good at recognizing even my really bad handwriting these days. It's gotten worse through disuse, over the years. So
you're an Apple tester, huh? A side gig. They
right.
hold you up as one of the worst. So if it
they probably do,
for Martin,
I could submit that. Yeah, exactly. Okay. So that's PKM. We'll talk about this more as we kind of do our own little personal journeys. But I'm really excited about what it's doing for some of my day-to-day activities, and I really like the fact that it's not making me learn a whole lot of new things. I mean, I'm using tools that I'm already comfortable with, and that's one of the big things about overcoming technology is you're not fighting the technology; it's just kind of working with you.
Good stuff. Good stuff.
All
Thanks for
right.
sharing your brain with us. We
Yeah,
appreciate it.
we'll see. We'll keep you posted. All right. Let's move on to the next segment of our show, Sally, and that is news in tech.
Yeah, and I guess we could say it wasn't the greatest week last week for our friends at Facebook. Facebook
Yes.
controls not just Facebook, but WhatsApp and Instagram. And they had a couple of outages last week. One big one, I think, on Monday, perhaps, and then another one towards the end of the week. And the world communications were slowed by that in pretty significant ways. Many people are relying on that, maybe not always for your professional connections, but also for your personal and family and friends connections and things might rely on those tools. And I think what we can take away from it as WELSTechers is that perhaps we don't want to put all our eggs in one basket. A good way to say it is consider your communication channels, and what if something were to go down with one of them? Would you have a backup plan? So that's kind of what an article that Martin and I read, kind of emphasized. What's your backup? What's your next way of communicating if some of your channels were to go down? And there's many ways to do that. It's funny, Martin, if I lost my phone and the phone numbers that are stored in there and didn't have easy access to that, I'm not sure I could even call my kids because I don't have their phone numbers like written down anywhere or whatever. Right. We rely very heavily on these things, and maybe it's worth taking a little bit of time, perhaps in some of your emergency planning for church and school or whatever it may be. What happens if some of our primary communication channels go down, and how are we going to stay in touch with people that we need to contact? So don't have any great answers for that, except there are many tools available, and it's just a matter of ensuring that you have some of those kind of safeguards in place with your communications.
Yeah, that's the thing. What do you do? It's kind of like when when a community has serious power outages. They say, "Oh, we got to fix that. We can't be so dependent on that." But then, what do you do? I think in general, the biggest challenge was for most of the rest of the world, where WhatsApp is kind of the primary tool for communication. We don't use it as much here in the States, but I'm sure our missionaries had issues not being able to communicate. And there are entire Bible studies that are done over WhatsApp, in our circles, and that's a challenge. So did you notice that it was down at all?
It was during work hours. I think I checked Facebook over lunch, and I read later a lot of people thought, oh, it was just me, and that's kind of the conclusion I came to. Oh, I must have a bad connection or something, and so I didn't pay a lot of attention to it. Did you notice, Martin?
I didn't notice one bit.
That's what I thought your answer would be. So yeah,
I don't know if that's
Facebook
good or bad, but
that
was not a big detriment to my workday. But anyway, but it is for some, and I think there was probably a dent in a lot of businesses who do business, in these tools too. So
I know my church relies on a Facebook group for a good bit of communication.
Exactly.
Not that we don't have other channels and stuff, but I would expect some churches noticed it. So,
we don't have solutions, folks. We're just purveyors of the news itself. All right, let's move. Speaking of news, Wells Now is a segment we do each and every time we gather here on WELSTech to talk about things going on in Wells. And I wanted to call your attention to an article that was posted. What's the date? There isn't a date on here. Recently, yes. It's an article by Caleb Bassett, who is the chairman of the technology subcommittee of the Hymnal Committee. And I happen to serve on that committee. And Caleb did a really nice job with this article entitled Humane Technology for Lutheran Worship. And he picks up on, and I'm probably going to mischaracterize the article. We should have brought him on to talk about this, but he talks about the upcoming release of the Service Builder, which is an electronic tool that is available to produce mostly bulletins, but also PowerPoint slides, those kinds of things, or service folders, I should say, with the new hymnal, obviously, as the data source. And his point is that, we often struggle with technology, and we have to kind of contort ourselves, and technology in and of itself is not neutral. It has an opinion. We've talked about that in the past too. And sometimes it's friend, sometimes it's foe, and but regardless, it's something we have to deal with, and sometimes that's a bad thing that we need to overcome. This particular technology is really built around and for people and gospel ministry. So from the ground up, it is a tool. It is a piece of technology that you can put into your life that has a very specific human purpose. It is meant to enable worship. It is meant to enable gospel sharing, prayer, all the things that a worship service and the things that go along with it are intended to do. This is an enabler. And so it's not necessarily about the bells and whistles, the shiny stuff. It's about getting out of the way, getting a tool into the hands of ministry workers who don't have to spend time, cropping or cutting and pasting lyrics, and cropping down melody lines and those kinds of things to fit slides and such. This does it for you. So that's why I think this is a great article to read. It talks about the process, and I am really looking forward to this coming out and getting into the hands of our pastors and worship leaders. I've been involved, obviously, with the technology committee for I don't know how many years now, but we're finally to the point where this is almost ready to release. I've been putting in, me and a few others have been putting in the actual hymns that are in the service builder, and we're doing the psalmody now, or the Psalter. And I think that once that's done, this thing will be ready to package up, so to speak, and available for subscription. So let's, take a read to this article. I think it Caleb does a nice job of calling out what it is and what it isn't, and worth a read. So
exciting stuff. We certainly thank the entire hymnal committee. Every day I see photos of the hymnals being delivered to different churches and schools. Everyone's super excited about this day finally arriving, and looking forward to beginning using it. So
my oldest daughter said she bought a copy, or had a copy. I don't remember which, but said, "Hey, Dad, your name's in the hymnal." I said, "What?" Apparently, they put the committee names in the hymnal. So, and to be honest, it was a privilege to serve in that fashion.
Well, we'll look forward to seeing the service builder demoed for us, perhaps on WELSTech sometime.
That'd be a great show. Yeah.
Awesome.
I also, and Wells now, wanted to call out the fact that our department, our Wells Technology Department, has a couple of open positions that we would love you to consider if you are qualified and want to come work for us, or if you know of somebody who might be qualified. One of them is a technical support specialist. And that is a person really kind of on the front lines, helping people who call in with, things anywhere from, hey, I need to update my user information, or I lost my username, or I need my password reset, to all kinds of other things related to ministry, and technology, and trying to make those two happy together. Not always as easy as we think it might be. The other the other position, I should say, is the the security analyst. And why did this just replace my page? Let me go back
click on the
here.
side there.
There it is. security analyst. And we've been looking for this person for quite some time. We thought we had a person and then it didn't work out. But essentially, this person would work with our department, but also the 4 schools, helping them and us be as secure and as privacy conscious as possible. There's all kinds of prevailing laws like GDPR and those kinds of things that we need to be paying attention to these days. And it's just something that we wanted a full-time person to handle. So we're excited about getting this person on board as well. So if you know of somebody who might fit this job description, and we'll put a link to both of those positions in the show notes.
I will say it's a great place to work. You won't be disappointed. So
right.
We'd love to have you.
All right. Let's move on, Sally, to our picks of the week. And you got to love a pick that has the word fantastic in it. So I'm really excited to hear what you have to say.
No pressure, but yeah, 9 fantastic DIY projects made with old phones. So I am attracted to this for a couple of reasons. One is we haven't talked about Make Use Of in quite some time. That's a really slick website that has a lot of cool, life hack kind of functions included there, so you can learn about different ways to use the technology to improve your life or whatever. This one I thought was really fun because it's kind of maker oriented, reusing or upcycling some old phones. And many of the uses they included in this article have to do with the phone's camera. So just because you have the technology there and it's out of date doesn't mean the camera doesn't work anymore, or some of the functionality doesn't work. That was part of it. So you could perhaps make a smartwatch from an old cell phone or make a security camera. You can use the batteries that are part of the phone as a power bank in a couple of different ways. They list that here. You can use it to make an MP3 player. So just zeroing in on one function for the phone. If you want to get really hacky, you can use it to create a projector from your old phone. So that looks a little bit more involved, taking the phone apart and stuff. I'm not sure if I would be up for that one, but there's a YouTube video to help you out if you want to give it a try. This one I thought was fun, using an old phone as an action camera. So like a GoPro or whatever. And it basically says put some Velcro on the back of it and strap it to your chest and go for a bike ride. And you have an action camera with your old phone. It's going to record that for you. Night vision camera. And then again, getting to some other uses with the batteries that are there. And finally, if nothing else, make some vintage wall art. Put your cameras on the wall as a kind of a museum piece to admire. So some of it tongue in cheek, but certainly if you've got an old phone laying around, it might be a good camera or a good MP3 player for you to make use of. So check out the article from makeuseof.com.
Very nice. Who doesn't have old phones lying around, right? Yes, fantastic is the word. Exactly right. All right. My pick of the week. Actually, I don't have these open, so let me open these real quick. But I had been doing a lot of reading lately and had a number of Kindle books I wanted to catch up with, and some for work, some for pleasure. But as I was mentioning in our PKM discussion, one way to use the Kindle great way to use the Kindle for reference work, literature that you find useful and want to implement or take notes on, is to use the notes in them. But one of the challenges I had is I have 2 accounts. I have a work account and a home account, and the device that I wanted to take notes on was the wrong account. So I was investigating how I could share books with myself, and in the course of research, I found ways to share with family members or basically anybody else. So friends and family are part of the whole Amazon Prime thing. So that's a real easy win there. But you can also share with almost anybody, basically loan a digital book. to them. And you can loan it for, this says 14 days. I think this article may be old. I'll have to double check this, but I think I could loan it to myself, so to speak, or a different Amazon account, and the two really aren't connected, for 30 days. So I think they probably up that. But so if you have a digital book, a Kindle book, that you want to loan out, you can do so. And it's simple. It was really simple. You just put in the email address. They get an email. They click on the link, and once they click on it, it automatically appears in their library, and then they have access to it for 30 days. So gone are the days when you forget that you loaned it out and you never get it back, because once the 30 days are expired, it becomes a part of your library. Now, you can't read it at the same time. So once you loan it, it's now out of your library, or it's not out of your library, but it's unavailable from your library. But after 30 days, it comes back. So they have 30 days to read it. So I thought that was pretty cool that you can actually lend Kindle books. I don't think there are any limitations, at least that I could find. So I thought that was a kind of a great deal. If you your books, just because you got them in digital format, doesn't mean that they're locked away in your device forever. You can lend them out as you please. So that is my pick of the week.
Super cool. And I bet I'll make use of that. But I have to tell you a library story, since you were talking about loaning things. It reminded me, we finally made it to the library in Mankato. We hadn't gotten our library cards yet, moved here in May. And as I'm perusing the cool library, they had a display of games you could check out. And they had a suitcase game that was an escape room in the suitcase. It was actually locked, closed, and you had to figure out how to get it open to even start playing the game. It was a Paul Bunyan theme. So you kind of learn stuff about Paul Bunyan, kind of the history around that character and things like that as you unlock the case and the things inside the case. It was very, very fun. So check out your library. They got cool stuff there. So
that's neat. They've rebuilt a library here close down the road here in Hartford. Very nice. And some of the things that they built into them with the digital age in mind are kind of nice too. They all have Wi-Fi. They have some sitting spaces. Now COVID kind of put a crimp in some of that, but I think once we're past that, hopefully these institutions will have life after the paper books too. So.
Definitely.
Good. All right. Should we move on to ministry resources?
And that one's in your ballpark, huh?
Yep. Ministry resources are a time where we share things that we think might be helpful for our folks interested in, obviously, ministry activities, whether that be call worker or lay worker. And one of the things that I've really been enjoying, especially on tablet these days, is YouVersion, the Bible app, so to speak. Seems like the tablet is just kind of the best way to enjoy that. And I do some daily reading plans and prayer lists and those kinds of things. And didn't know if everybody was aware that YouVersion, the Bible app, had kind of a prayer component to it. They have guided prayer, which I haven't used very much, so I can't speak to that. But one thing that I do use it for is their prayer list function. So I found a nice article or help article on the YouVersion website that talks about all the different ways that you can use the prayer functionality within the YouVersion app. So you can update prayers, share prayers with friends, edit a prayer, create a new prayer list, and note answered prayers, which is kind of neat. Sometimes we pray, but then we don't acknowledge that God has indeed answered our prayers. So this is a way to celebrate that and thank God for that. Archiving your prayers, restoring, deleting, notifications, reminders to pray, you can add here too. And these are all in the apps. Comment on prayers, et cetera, et cetera. Create a prayer from a Bible passage, just all kinds of, I think, really neat stuff that they've done. This app is really amazing. If you haven't played with or used the YouVersion app lately, go ahead and download it to your phone or tablet, or go to uversion.com and enjoy it there. They have all the translations. They have narrated versions of all the translations. You can compare translations, et cetera, et cetera. Pretty cool stuff. So that'd be my ministry resource.
And also available at Bible.com. I think they have both those
Right.
domains.
Exactly.
So,
Yep.
good stuff.
Yeah. In fact, when you search it, I think from the iOS store, Android store, search for Bible, and I think it's the one that comes up. So, all right, Sally, you're up next with community feedback.
Yep. And we have been hearing from different WELSTechers in different ways. First up, I mentioned that we heard it from Linda, and I didn't note here her congregation, but she is using crossword puzzles that she gets in Bible-based crossword puzzles in their print newsletter. And basically she was having some challenges around the quality of the PDF crossword puzzle that she's inserting to the newsletter, that it's kind of small and hard to read. I would guess maybe print quality isn't the greatest. And she just wondered if any WELSTechers had any suggestions around Bible-based crossword puzzles. Thought it was a cool question. One thing I mentioned to her is that sometimes that moving from a PDF into a different format and things like that might be causing some degradation of the quality. And if she had good quality on her screen, she might do well to just take a screenshot of it rather than trying to actually incorporate the actual file. And there's many screen capture options out there. I'm a personal fan of Snagit from TechSmith. Really super easy to use and intuitive, and also super robust. You can do so much with it. But even if you don't have a paid for product like Snagit, with Windows machines, Microsoft builds in a snipping tool that you can use to do screen capture. So you basically just kind of draw a box around what you want to capture, and it becomes an image that you could incorporate into your newsletter or whatever. So maybe playing with some of that might give her a higher quality than just directly importing the PDF. I also found a lot of different crossword puzzle generator programs out on the web, and sent her a few links. Maybe she didn't have some of them, and they might produce it in a higher quality or in a different format than what she was used to using. So that's my take on crossword puzzles for your newsletter. But if anyone listening has other suggestions for Linda, we would be happy to pass them along.
Excellent.
All right. Next up, I wanted to mention that we heard from Dr. Tom Custer, who is behind the Gospel Outreach with Media online conference that's sponsored by the Christ in Media Institute, a ministry of Bethany Lutheran College. And Dr. Custer has been behind this effort for many years now, a great friend of WELSTech. And he just wanted us to mention to our audience that that conference is starting next week, October 18th, and will run through November 8th. And it's a pretty neat way that they do it. They post information, articles, or summaries of ideas and things, and then they open it for discussion. And during that time period, the discussion boards will be open, and you can talk to the author of the article, ask questions, maybe give additional ideas or comments around what they've presented. And at the end of the time period, they basically close the discussion boards, but they archive everything. So they're there for all of history. Then you can go back and look at past conferences and read the discussion around them and stuff. So Dr. Custer gave us a little preview. This is kind of insider information, Martin. I was excited to see this, where he shared the topics that are going to be part of this year's conference. So I'm going to do a quick rundown of the different topics that you can expect to participate in with this year's conference. The gospel for today and always, the gospel in glass, and then maybe some related one, Old Main commemorative window. I'm guessing that's at Bethany Lutheran College, and stained glass production. I think that would be really interesting to learn more about how people use that media to express the gospel. Congregation commissions. I think maybe that's around again, artwork in congregations. And then they get a little bit into VR. There's a XR project and festival coming up. There's going to be details on that. Outreach with VR, VR in education, and my confirmation class in VR by one of our favorites, Pastor Rob Gunther from St. John's in New Ulm, Minnesota. Love to hear what he's doing creative with virtual reality in his classroom. Using short film for instruction, redemptive analogies in film, becoming a Christian screenwriter, effective church homepages. That's a topic we all could probably peruse and improve upon. Serving women via Skype, internet outreach, chips for African phones, and toys in outreach. Wow, they've got quite the spectrum of topics. I'm sure it will be very interesting. It's always neat to dive into those presentations and learn new things. So check it out. The website, Gospel Outreach with Media, is GOWM.org. And again, the dates are October 18th through November 8th. And then finally, I wanted to give
those are really exciting topics, Sally. I think the neat part about this is you can kind of dip into any of these in and out over the course of that period of time and really drink in some of that knowledge. And some of the speakers he has, or quote unquote speakers he has, are really experts in their field. So this is this would be a neat thing.
Very much so. And I believe I mentioned on the last show, Martin, that we've done a little bit of updates to the WELSTech website. And one more that I wanted to mention this week is a brand new tab on WELSTech. It's the video tab. Since we're going back to doing video podcasting, we added a tab that just features WELSTech videos and the entire history of WELSTech videos. So you'll find some from the past where we used to video podcast, and then obviously the more recent ones will be stacked up there as we add more and more episodes to our arsenal. So check out the video tab at the top of the WELSTech website, welstech.wels.net, for that video archive.
Sally, thanks for everything you do with that website. That is really a treasure trove, kind of a living history of where we've been. And
it's my PKM, I claim.
That's true. Yep,
there's a lot of my brain there.
Second brain. Yeah, they call PKM systems your second brain. I think our show notes page is kind of equally the same. So yeah. Yeah. Well, we want to thank our listeners and viewers for joining us again today. Again, this is a show, if you haven't guessed, it's a show about technology and ministry and where those two intersect. If you have ideas for different show topics, people to interview, we're always looking for that kind of stuff. Let us know that. Go to that show notes page, welstech.wels.net, and leave us a voicemail there, or leave a comment on one of the shows. You can send us an email, welstech@wels.net. We're on all the socials, so those links are all there on the page as well. So come on in and join the conversation. We would love to make the show better, and you can help us do that. So there's always room for improvement, even after, or maybe even especially after 664, whatever it is that we're at. So hopefully you'll come back for 665. Thank you so much for joining us. God bless your week, and see you soon. Bye-bye.